Okay, we'll start the class. So in the previous class of earthquake resistance structure subject, I have discussed about the structural configuration and the plan irregularities of a building. Today's class will discuss the next coming topics, that is vertical irregularities, soft storage, and design for soft storage, etc. Please mute the audio. Please mute the audio. So with respect to this plan irregularities or irregularities of the building, it may be plan irregularity, or it may be vertical irregularities, or it may be torsional irregularities. Okay. The clear explanation with clear figures is given in the code book itself. We can refer to the code book. Okay. No need to refer any other material. Okay. In the previous class, I have discussed plan irregularities. Today's class we'll go through vertical irregularities. With respect to this vertical irregularities, in page number 18 of IS 1893 code book, it is clearly given what are the different types of vertical irregularities will come, and corresponding diagrams are also given in the code book. Okay, in the page number 21 and 22 diagrams are given. In page number 18, the explanation for different types of vertical irregularities are given. Okay, let me go to the table number 5, page number 18. Yes, screen is visible, right? Yes, screen is visible right now. So plan irregularities I have already discussed in the previous class. Now we will discuss about the vertical irregularities. Vertical irregularity means along the height of the floor, whatever the irregularities which will affect the load carrying capacity of the building for the lateral forces, they are all called as vertical irregularities. Okay, and these vertical irregularities are discussed with respect to the stiffness, mass, okay, geometry, okay, and plane of structural elements. Okay, in terms of all these parameters, so this vertical irregularities are discussed. In that, first one is stiffness irregularity, nothing but soft storage. A soft storage, I think you all know about the soft storage. For parking purpose and all, the ground floor usually it will not be there. We will not provide any infill walls. Only the frames will be there. But next coming floors will be provided with infill walls. Okay. So that kind of floor, what we call as soft storage. And there is a condition given to consider a storage as soft storage. Okay. You go through it. A soft storage is one in which the lateral stiffness is less than 70% of that storage above of that storage above, and less than 80% of the average lateral stiffness of 3 storage above. Okay. See, if you have a n number of floors, okay. if we have a n number of floors, then a story is considered to be a sub-story. Okay, sub-story when the lateral stiffness of that story, okay, story I, okay, let us take ith story, lateral stiffness of that particular story is less than 70% of lateral stiffness of story plus 1. Okay, means lateral stiffness of this top above the upper floor or neighbor floor. Okay, it is considered, it is assumed as soft story when its lateral stiffness K is less than 70% of the lateral stiffness of the upper floor or the neighbor floor. Okay, and it is considered as soft story for one more condition when the average stiffness of the top three stories above the eighth story, okay, the average stiffness, okay, average, okay, Ki average okay, the stiffness of eighth story, if it is less than, okay, if it is less than stiffness of average stiffnesses of upper lying stories, upper lying three stories, 80% of average stiffness of upper lying floors, okay, means three consecutive floors, then also it is considered as soft story. Okay, if I elaborate this equation, it will be Ki plus 1 plus Ki plus 2 plus Ki plus 3 whole divided by 3. If you do, you will get average stiffness of top three story above this story. Okay, if stiffness of this particular story is less than 80% of average stiffness of top three stories, then also it is considered as soft story. Okay, then also it is considered as soft story. The same thing is written. Respect to the vertical irregularity, there is one more term we will use, that is extreme soft story. Okay, extreme soft story. In case of stiffness irregularity, there are two main types. One is soft story, another one is extreme soft story. In case of extreme soft story, only the percentage whatever we have mentioned, no, these percentages will vary. The 70 becomes 60, 80% becomes 70. Okay, the condition is same, but the percentage will vary for extreme soft story. Okay, the percentage will vary for extreme soft story. Okay, here also you can see the same terms is given, only the percentage is changed. Extreme soft story is one in which the lateral stiffness is less than 60% of that the story above, or less than 70% of average stiffness of three stories above. Okay, in that case it is considered as stiffness irregularity or soft story. Okay, for this the figures are given. You can see here soft story when Ki is less than 0.7, Ki plus 1, or Ki is less than 0.8 or 80% of average stiffness of top stories. Okay, so while writing in the examination, for each cases or for each points, you write the corresponding diagram and give the explanation. Okay, if you are writing for soft story, write that figure. Okay, below that figure you need to give this explanation. Next, the stiffness irregularity is over. Next is mass irregularity. Okay, mass irregularity shall be considered to exist where the seismic weight of any story is more than 200% of adjacent story. Okay. Similarly, here seismic weight of ith story. Okay, M. If we assume M as seismic weight of a particular story, if adjacent story is having more than, okay, more than 200% of this mass, means two times this mass. Okay, if this weight of or mass of equivalent mass of this next story or neighboring story is greater than two times the mass of the considered story, then it is called as mass irregularity. Here also same thing. M, this is Mi plus 1, Mi plus 1, this is Mi minus 1. Greater than 2m, then it is assumed to be assumed to have the vertical irregularity or the mass irregularity. Okay. If you are having a mass m at one floor, if you take mass of the upper lying floor or the lower floor, if those masses exceeds two times the mass of the story considered, then it will have the mass irregularity. Okay. I think the relative figures are given below. Yes, here you can see the mass. One particular floor, mass of one particular floor is considered. If this mass, if the mass of upper lying floor or the underlying floor is more than two times mass of this particular floor, then it is called as a mass irregularity. Okay. Here you can see Wi, weight of ith floor, if it is greater than 2 times Wi minus 1, means lower floor, or if weight of ith floor is greater than 2 times I plus 1th floor, I plus 1 floor means upper lying floor, then it is considered as mass irregularity. Okay. Then coming to, now we have studied vertical irregularity with respect to the stiffness and mass. Next comes to the geometry. Okay, with respect to geometry, how we have to consider the vertical irregularity. Let us see that vertical geometric irregularity shall be considered to exist where the horizontal dimension of the lateral force resisting system in any story is more than 150% of that in adjacent story. Okay. For example, if I write a elevation of a building, okay. So with respect to the statement given here, vertical geometric irregularity shall be considered to exist when the horizontal dimension of the lateral force system in any story is more than 150% of that in adjacent story. So here we have one story, two story. This is a two story building. Okay. If you take L as length of this story and L1 as length of the top story, L2 as length of bottom story, if this L2 dimension is there no? If L2 dimension is greater than 1.5 times of L1, then it is assumed to have the geometric irregularity. Okay, then it is assumed to have geometric irregularity. For that also figure is given for geometric irregularity. Here you can see L1, L2. Okay, if L2 is greater than 150% of L1 or 1.5 times of L1, then it is considered as geometric irregularity. Okay. Now, vertical irregularity with respect to stiffness, mass, geometry is over. Next, with respect to the plane of the structural elements. Okay. Then with respect to the plane of the structural elements, the vertical irregularity is defined. You just go through it. A in plane offset of the lateral force resisting elements greater than length. If you refer to the figure, then you will be able to understand in a clear way. You can see here. Okay. Here, one particular structural element is considered. Okay, is considered. On one floor, this gap is B. Okay, there is a in lower floor there is a gap of B is given, and next floor immediately it has started without any gap. Okay, therefore, like this, if any in plane discontinuity occurs, then also it is considered as vertical irregularity. Okay, you can see a gap here. Okay, you can see a gap here. This kind of gap should not be there. Okay, if it is a continuous structural element throughout the height of the beam, then there is no issue with the vertical irregularity. If there is discontinuity in elevation of any structural element, then it is called as in plane discontinuity. Okay, or in plane vertical irregularity. Okay. The next is discontinuity in capacity, weak storage. A weak storage is one in which the lateral storage strength is less than 80%, that is story above. Okay. See, this vertical irregularity is also described in with respect to the load carrying capacity or the strength of the floor as like stiffness, as like in stiffness irregularity. With respect to the strength of the story, the weak story is defined. How it is defined? If strength of one particular floor is less than 80% of the neighboring floor, either it may be the top floor or the bottom floor, then it is considered as discontinuity in capacity or the weak story. Okay, so this is how the vertical irregularities are defined with respect to the stiffness, mass, geometry, okay, and plane of the structural elements and strength of the floor. Okay. So to this, if you have got any doubts, you can ask. To this, the discussion on vertical irregularities are over. If you need any clarification, you can ask before going to the next topic. Okay. The next is soft story and design provision for soft story. Soft story, little bit I have already discussed while discussing in vertical irregularities. Okay, and there is some design provision for buildings with soft story that we'll see now. Okay. With respect to soft story and design provision for soft story, it is given in codebook itself. Okay, I have identified where all this information on soft story will come, and clearly I have written with respect to the class number and with respect to the page number. I have written, just you need to remember all these page numbers and the class numbers. Okay, you can write with respect to this part. Okay, soft story and design provision for soft story. First, we will see page number 10 of class number 4.2. Okay, page number 10. Just in this page, just a definition is given. Software definition is given. Okay. It is one way in which the lateral stiffness is less than 70% of that story above or less than 80% of the arrest stiffness of 3 stories above. Okay, then coming to the next page number 18. Just now we have discussed with respect to the vertical irregularities based on the stiffness. Page number 18. Okay, here we have discussed, we have to write these things also. Okay, the same definition is written here. Whatever the page number was there in page number, whatever the definition was there in page number 10, the same definition is written. No need to refer page number 10, just you refer page number 18. Okay, here in page number 18, he has defined what is the meaning of soft story or the extreme soft story. So in the next page number 27, he has given the guideline. Okay, he has given the guideline or the design provision for soft story building. Okay, how to take the soft story of a building for design purpose. That guideline is given in page number 27. Let us go to page number 27 now. Let us see what is the design guideline given with respect to the soft story. Okay, in most of the structures, okay, obviously with no options we have to go for soft stories. Okay, when the soft story of a building comes into picture, what is the guideline we have to follow for design of the building? Okay, with respect to the soft story, that guideline is given in page number 27. Class number 7.10. Here you can see in case of buildings with flexible storage such as ground storage consisting of open spaces, this is all the cases with which the soft storage will come. That explanation. Okay, here we have some guidelines. Okay, in these 2 points, let us see what is it. The following design criteria are to be adopted after carrying out the earthquake analysis, neglecting the effect of infill in other stories. See what is the guideline? You just go through it. The columns and beams of the soft story are to be designed for 2.5 times the story shears and moments calculated under seismic loads. Okay. For example, if you calculate the story shear for the soft story, okay, if you assume this as the soft story, for this you will get some story shear Q1. Okay. If it is a soft story, then instead of designing the beam for Q1 force, what we will do is we will design it for 2.5 times Q1. Okay, we will design it for 2.5 times Q1. Okay, if it is a soft story, 2.5 times the story shear and moments calculated under seismic loads. Okay, that is one guideline. Next, besides the column designed and detailed for the calculated story shears and moments, shear walls placed symmetrically in both directions of the building as far away from the center of the building as feasible. Okay, and to be designed exclusively for 1.5 times lateral story shear force calculated as above. Okay, if there is a provision to provide the shear walls, then we can go for providing the shear walls. If suppose this is the plan of the building, okay, suppose this is the plan of the building, you have to provide the shear walls symmetrically on both the sides. Suppose if you are providing shear walls at center of the span like this, you need to provide the symmetrical shear walls on all the sides of the building, or else you can provide shear walls at corners as well. Okay, Symmetrically, by providing these kind of shear walls, we can increase or we can improve the lateral resistance of the soft array. Okay, if there is no provision, we have to design the structural elements for 2.5 times Q1. Okay, so this is about the soft array, definition of the soft array and design provision. Design provisions are these 2 points. Okay, you need to write these 2 points as design provision. Okay. Understanding, students? Understanding? Please, anyone reply?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now coming to the torsion and design provision for torsion. Similarly, for software, as like in software, here there is a design provision for given design provision given for torsion. Okay, that is also there in the code book. In table number 4 and page number 18, with respect to the torsion, it is given. What is the meaning of torsion? He has given. This I have already explained. Okay, while discussing the plan irregularities. Torsion irregularity is one of the side line which comes under plan irregularities, right? There are already discussed, and design guideline I will discuss. It is given in page number 26. Okay, let us first go to page number 18, table number 4. At the starting only I have explained about this torsion irregularity. Okay, the torsion irregularity is considered when floor diaphragms are rigid in their own plan in relation to the vertical structural elements that resist the lateral forces. See, for example, the stiffness of the slab is higher than the stiffness of the floor, then that difference in stiffness, okay, we may lead to the torsion of the building or torsional buckling of the building. A torsional irregularity to be considered to exist when the maximum story drift computed with design eccentricity at one end of the structure transverse to an axis is more than 1.2 times the average of the story drifts at the other 2 ends of the structure. Let me go to the figure so that you can understand in a better way. See, here there is a example for torsional irregularity. Due to the torsion which is induced into the structure, there is, you can observe there is some deflections at both the edges of the building. Okay, at both the corners of the building. At corner 1, delta 1 is the deflection. At corner 2, delta 2 is the deflection. Okay, at corner 1, delta 1 is the deflection, and at corner 2, delta 2 is the deflection. If you calculate average of both the deflections at both the corners, that is delta 1 plus delta 2 divided by 2, okay, you will get some value delta 3. Okay, if average of both the deflections caused at both the corners is greater than 1.2 times the deflection at one particular corner, delta 1, then it is assumed to have torsional irregularity. Okay, there is a building with delta 1 displacement at one corner and delta 2 displacement at other corner. If we calculate the average of both the displacements, delta 1 plus delta 2 divided by 2, which we assumed as delta 3, if this value is greater than deflection at any one end, 1.2 times deflection at any one end, then the building is assumed to have torsional irregularity. Okay, so this is with respect to the definition of torsional irregularity. If there is any guideline given for torsional irregularity, we will go to page number 26, class number 7.9. As here it is given. Okay, the design guideline for torsional irregularity. Okay, for designing a structure with respect to the torsional irregularity, we have to consider design eccentricity, that is EDI. Okay, EDI, which is given as 1.5 times ESI plus 0.05 BI, then ESI minus 0.05 EI, whichever gives the severe effect in the shear of any frame where any frame, okay, where the explanation for each and the terms are given in below. We have to, what you have to do is to design a structure for torsional irregularity. You need to calculate the design eccentricity. Okay, that design eccentricity should be calculated in two ways. That is 1.5 ESI plus 0.05 E 0.05 BI. After these two calculations, whichever the maximum value we will get, no, for that maximum value of value we will consider as design eccentricity. Okay, where ESI is the static eccentricity of the floor defined as a distance between center of mass to the center of rigidity. Okay, center of mass and center of rigidity that I have already discussed in the previous model number 2. Correct? Even we have solved problems to find the center of rigidity, center of stiffness, center of mass. We have solved 2 examples as well. You all are aware of that one. Here ESI, this is not the EDI, okay, this is not the EDI, there is some mistake. This is ESI, where ESI is nothing but it is static eccentricity, okay, which is the distance between the center of mass to that of center of rigidity, okay, that is called as ESI. That 1.5 times ESI plus BI. BI is the floor plan dimension of floor I perpendicular to the direction of force. For example, if the direction of force is like this, the story shear is like this QI, then the perpendicular dimension of floor, okay, to the direction of the floor, direction of the story shear is considered. That is called as BI. This length is BI. Okay. So knowing BI and static eccentricity at ith floor, you calculate these two things, okay, which are the maximum value you will get it. For that maximum value, by taking that as design eccentricity, you will perform the design of the building. Okay, this is what the guideline for considering the torsional irregularity in the building. Okay. So this is about the vertical irregularities, okay, soft story and torsional irregularity and design provision for both soft story and torsion. Okay. The next topic what we have is effect of infill masonry walls on frames. Okay. Let us see what is the effect of infill masonry walls on frames. Please write these 3 figures. Write these 3 figures. So I am stressing again and again, EQRS subject, the figures are very important. Okay, if you are able to write neat figures, then there is no problem in writing the explanation, and you will be allotted with maximum number of marks. Okay, therefore, before while preparing for your examination or internal whatever, you must practice all the figures twice, thrice. Okay, and a number of times you need to practice the figures. Okay. So the next coming topics are all related to the study of masonry in related to the earthquake. Okay, we will be studying the behavior of masonry walls during the earthquake and how to design the masonry walls for earthquake forces. Okay, and in that the first topic is effect of infill masonry walls on frames. Okay, these masonry walls play a vital role during the earthquake event. Okay, in handling the earthquake forces. Okay, the masonry walls, they are not fully advantageous for earthquake resistance. There is some disadvantages as well that we'll see. Okay, if a building is provided with infill masonry walls, there are some advantages and there are some disadvantages that we'll see. Okay, and doing the design of a building, okay, while doing design of a building, what we'll do usually, we'll take into consideration of all the dead weight of the masonry onto the frame and we'll design the building. Okay, while performing the design, we will consider the dead weight of all the walls. Okay, all the walls and dead weight will be the dead weight of all the walls will be transferred to the beams, then from beams to the columns and columns to the foundation. These dead weights will be considered for the design of structural elements. But the contribution of strength and stiffness of these walls to the frames is not considered. Okay. While performing the design, the self weight of the walls onto the beams is considered, but the contribution of wall towards strength and stiffness of the frame is not considered. Why? Because even if you consider, there will be a marginal difference between strength and stiffness and wall. Okay, that is why strength and stiffness contribution of the walls are not considered. Okay, see a behavior of a frame with infill wall during an earthquake. Okay, behavior of a frame with infill wall during the earthquake or whenever the lateral force acts onto it. Okay, if the frame is provided with infill walls, you can see a single frame. Okay, single frame which is provided with infill walls on here a single storage, a single room is taken. Okay, which is provided with infill walls on all the sides. Okay, and there is a lateral force acting onto it. Due to this lateral force, how these walls will contribute towards handling these lateral forces means, whenever the lateral force acts onto the infill wall or the frame which is containing infill wall, these infill wall will form a compressive resistance. They will form a tie. Okay, they will act as a tie beam between these two corners and strut between these two corners. Means you can see on one side, on one diagonal, okay, the tension will be developed. Okay, and on the other side, the compression will be developed. Compression will be developed. Okay, so to resist whenever the earthquake lateral force acts into the frame, whatever you have considered, because of this tension force on one side and compression force on one side, one diagonal, the one particular diagonal of the room will act like a tie beam. Okay, it will act like a tie beam. Okay, tie beams which can handle the tensile forces. Other diagonal part of the room will act as a strut. Okay, it will act as a strut which can handle the compressive forces or compressive stresses induced due to the deformation. Okay, in that way, the masonry walls contribute towards so this is one of the point with respect to the behavior of masonry during the earthquake. Next, coming to the next point. The contribution of masonry infill, MI stands for masonry infill. Okay, MI stands for masonry infill. The contribution of masonry infill increases the stiffness. Okay. See, when you provide the masonry infill into the frame, definitely the stiffness will increase. Okay, the stiffness will increase. If the stiffness increases, what about the natural frequency? Increases or decreases? If stiffness increases, okay, see if you provide the masonry infill, for the frame, the stiffness of the infill will be there, okay, which will be add on to the stiffness of the frame. Therefore, the overall stiffness will increases. If the stiffness increases, what about the natural frequency? Natural frequency will increase because they both are directly proportional. If natural frequency increases, what about the time period? Time period will decreases. Correct? Because the natural frequency and time period are inversely proportional to each other. Therefore, when the stiffness increases, natural frequency increases. When the natural frequency increases, it will in turn reduce the time period of the building. See, when time period decreases, okay, then it will lead to more acceleration. Okay, that the acceleration of the building will increases, which will in turn cause higher seismic forces in the building. This is one of the disadvantages of masonry infill. Okay, when you provide masonry infill, it will increase the stiffness of the overall frame. Stiffness increases, then natural frequency increases. When natural frequency increases, it will result in reduced time period. When the time period reduced time period means what? With a short period of time only, the structure will oscillate fastly. Okay, the oscillation of the structure will be faster. When the oscillation is faster, okay, because time period is very less. Time taken to cover one complete cycle is very less. When the time taken to complete one full cycle is less, then the speed of the oscillation of the building will be higher. When the speed increases, acceleration increases. When the acceleration increases, the resultant story shear which acts on story will increases. Okay, this is one of the disadvantage of masonry infill. Okay, I hope you understood. Therefore, it is recommended to isolate masonry infill from the RC frame so that they can be treated as non-structural components. That is why, while performing the design, these masonry infill walls are considered as non-structural elements. Just the sulfate of the masonry infill is considered. Okay. And one more disadvantage with respect to this masonry infill is, see, when you provide the masonry infill, this is a regular structure, no problem. Okay, there is a whatever the we have considered a single room, it is a regular structure, no problem with respect to the eccentricity. If a plan of the building is irregular in nature, if it has got a irregular plan, if it has got a irregular plan, in that case, if you go with masonry infills, what will happen is there is much difference in eccentricity. Okay, means the distance between modulus of the difference between the center of mass to that of center of rigidity will be higher. Okay, in that way the eccentricity will increases. When the eccentricity increases, the performance of the building will decreases. Okay, that is also one of the disadvantage of this masonry infill. Understanding? See, when if a building has got irregular plan, okay, like this, okay, if you provide masonry infill, okay, at all wherever it is possible, if you go for providing the masonry infill, then what will happen is the modulus, the center of the difference between center of mass and center of rigidity will also increases. Means eccentricity will increase. When the eccentricity increases, the torsional forces will induced will be more. Okay, and the building will fail suddenly. Correct. Therefore, that is also one of the disadvantages of providing masonry infill. Okay. The same thing are mentioned here. The shortening of the time period increases the response acceleration and enhances seismic forces. Okay, I already explained how this shortening of the time period will take place. Then one more disadvantage is brittle behavior of the masonry decreases energy dissipation and damping by the structure. This masonry, it is not reinforced actually. It can handle large number of compressive forces. Okay, masonry can handle large number of compressive force, but it cannot handle the tensile forces or the flexural forces or the bending. Okay, suddenly the cracks will appear in the walls if you are providing the masonry infills. You can observe sudden cracks immediately the building after subjecting to the lateral force. Because of those cracks, the performance of the building will decreases. Okay, that is why it is mentioned like brittle behavior. Okay, if you take column, beam, and the slab, they are reinforced elements. Okay, they are all reinforced elements, and they can handle the lateral forces. Okay, they will have good resistance to the bending moment or the flexure, okay, or the tensile stresses. Okay, but in case of walls, they will behave in a brittle fashion. Suddenly, the cracks will be observed in the walls, okay, which will reduce the energy dissipation or damping in the structure. Okay. The asymmetric placement of masonry infill introduces torsion in the structure. This I already explained. So these are all some advantages of the masonry infill, and there are some favorable characteristics of masonry infill walls. Okay, means some advantages of masonry infill walls. The first one is strength contribution. Okay, strength of the building will increase with respect to the gravity loads. I'm telling you. Okay, with respect to the gravity loads, the strength of the masonry infill increases. Then there will be a high inertial lateral stiffness. The inertia of force or the moment of inertia of the structure will be higher when you are providing the masonry infills. Okay, because of that inertia of force, at the beginning of the earthquake event, okay, at the beginning of earthquake event, suddenly after the application of the lateral forces, the building will not start vibrating. It has got some initial inertia forces, a moment of inertia. Because of that inertia, initially it will resist. Okay, it will resist a good amount of okay, good magnitude of earthquake force. When its resistance to the initial magnitude of the earthquake forces decreases, then building starts vibrating. When the building starts vibrating, then the problems will be more. The crack of the masonry and the torsional effect, everything will be higher. Okay, but at the initial stage, definitely it will contribute towards handling the earthquake forces. Okay. Then third advantage is a large energy dissipation capacity of the masonry while developing the cracks. Okay, this is also at the initial stage. Okay, there will be large dissipation of energy. Okay, at the initial stages. Okay, the masonry will greatly decreases the deformation and ductility demand on RCC frame members as the stiffness of the structure is greatly increased. Okay. This is about the effect of masonry infill walls on frames. Okay. The next topic is modeling concepts of infill masonry walls. Please write all these three figures. Please write these figures. Take 2 minutes time to 3 minutes time. you give headline as there are two types of modeling concepts of infill masonry walls. First one is equivalent diagonal strut model, and second one is equivalent frame. Okay, first we'll discuss about equivalent diagonal strut model. It is a very simple technique. Are you able to understand what is the meaning of modeling concept of infill masonry wall? The modeling concept of infill masonry walls is here. Just by taking the wall properties as it is, what we'll do is we will form an equivalent model for the purpose of earthquake analysis. Okay, whatever the behavior of the walls is there, no, or the contribution of the walls is there, no, for that we will prepare a equivalent model. Okay, that equivalent model, either it may be in terms of diagonal struts or equivalent frame. Okay, either it may be in terms of diagonal struts or equivalent frame. Okay, the infill masonry walls, the building with infill masonry walls, it is not analyzed as it is. Okay, we will generate an equivalent model. Okay, equivalent model for that building with masonry walls. Okay, that equivalent model, it may be with respect to the equivalent diagonal strut model, or it may be with respect to the equivalent frame. Okay, that is the meaning of modeling concept. Okay, in that first thing what we have is equivalent diagonal strut model. Okay, equivalent diagonal strut model. Okay, assume that a building is provided with some particular wall, infill masonry wall, having some certain height and having some length and having some thickness. Okay. Now, with respect to this equivalent diagonal strut model, how it is modeled in terms of diagonal strut, let us see. For that, there is a formula. Okay, so whatever the wall which we have provided, no, of certain length, height, and the thickness, that will be converted into an equivalent strut. Okay, in the figure it is mentioned. You can see it is converted into an equivalent strut. Okay, having a width of WEF, W effective. Okay, and formula for this WEF is written below, which is given by 0.175 lambda h raised to minus 0.4 into h square plus l square raised to 1 by 2, where lambda is the constant, h is height of the wall, okay, or height of the frame, and length, l is the length of the wall, and lambda is the constant which is calculated using this formula, EIT sine 2 theta into 4 EFIC into HI. Okay, where EI is modulus of elasticity of infill. Okay, modulus of elasticity of infill means modulus of elasticity of the wall, infill wall. Okay, masonry. Okay, and T is the thickness of infill. Okay, T is the thickness of infill, and theta is the angle of diagonal strut, this angle. Okay, angle of diagonal strut. Okay, knowing all these things, we will calculate lambda, and using this lambda, we will calculate the equivalent strut having a specified width mentioned by this formula. Okay, as applicable to this formula WEF. Okay, now what we have done is a masonry infill is converted into an equivalent strut. Okay, an equivalent strut which is provided along the diagonal having WEF. Okay, having some specific width which is calculated by this formula. That WEF mainly depends on properties of the wall. Okay, properties of the wall like modulus of elasticity, length, thickness. Okay, and angle of this diagonal. Okay, depending upon all those parameters, we will calculate WEF, and by assuming that wall as a equivalent strut, we will perform the earthquake analysis. Okay, so this is about equivalent diagonal strut model. Okay, very simple thing. Okay, the wall is converted into a equivalent strut which is provided along the diagonal having width as specified by this formula. Okay, you need to remember these two formulae. Okay, it is not given in the code book. This is one way of modeling masonry wall. Okay, in terms of equivalent diagonal strut. There is one more way. A building with infill wall is assumed with a equivalent frame. Okay, assumed with a equivalent frame. Okay, let us see how that equivalent frame is assumed. Equivalent frame model. So see, this figure is somewhat confusing. Okay, this figure is somewhat confusing. That is why I have pasted. I have written one more figure here. Kindly ignore this figure. Because this is somewhat confusing. This is a very clear representation of modeling of masonry walls in terms of equivalent frame model. You can write these two figures. Okay, and these three figures are optional. If you want, if you write, it will be better. Otherwise, no issue. Okay, it will be okay. Okay, please note this these two figures quickly. Write the headline as second one, equivalent frame model. Okay, just write these two figures. Write these two figures. Okay. So similar to the equivalent strut model, here instead of converting a masonry infill wall into a equivalent strut, what will be done is that masonry infill structure is converted into a equivalent frame. Okay, that is the thing here. Okay, instead of converting a masonry infill structure into a diagonal strut element, here what will be finding is we will find an equivalent frame model. Okay, by using that, by taking that frame model, we will do the earthquake analysis. Here you can see a small structure with infill masonry wall. Okay, a small structure with infill masonry wall. This infill masonry wall is subdivided into a number of components. Here you can see. Okay. This infill masonry wall is subdivided into a number of components, which is mentioned in the right figure. You can see here that number of components, whatever the vertical components are there, no, those components are assumed as piers or the struts. Okay, and horizontal components. Okay, horizontal components are assumed as the deep beams or the spandrels. Here you can see, if I draw a dotted line here, you can see, if you divide like this, you can see this portion is assumed as pier. Okay, pier, and this portion is assumed as the deep beam or the spandrel element. Okay, spandrel element. So whatever the infill wall which is there in this structure is assumed as number of components having a number of piers and the number of spandrel elements. Okay, number of spandrel elements. In this way, by assuming a wall into spandrel elements are the deep beams as deep beams and the piers or the columns, the analysis will be performed. Here in the figure below, you can see a single pier, the loading on single pier. Okay, so after dividing this wall into a number of components, one particular component, that is a pier, is taken, and the diagram, the second diagram, which will represent, is representing the force displacement diagram. Okay, the variation of displacement with respect to the increase in the force, and third diagram representing the stress distribution. Okay, stress distribution. Okay, that is shear stress distribution in the element. Okay, so this is how we convert a masonry infill structure into an equivalent frame. Equivalent frame is, it is a combination of beam and the column. Okay, this masonry infill wall will be converted, will be idealized as the columns and the beams, and the analysis will be performed. Okay, so this is about modeling concepts of infill masonry walls. This is very important for the point of your examination, external examination. Okay, so many times this has been asked. If it is asked, you need to explain both the methods, equivalent diagnostics and equivalent frame. Very simple thing. You need to remember this formula. Okay, other than that, it is very simple to explain, and you need to write neat diagrams. Okay. The next is slenderness concept of masonry walls. Write the figures. Write the figures. Write the headline as slenderness concept of masonry walls. Don't simply sit. Okay, all of you please write the figures once. Okay, so that it will be a practice for you all. That is why I am giving time for you. Please practice. Diagrams are very important. You write as it is. Okay, don't make any here whatever the proportionality I have maintained in writing these walls, all these three walls, you also maintain the same proportionality with respect to the thickness, with respect to the height. Okay, whatever the proportionality I have maintained, you need to maintain the same proportionality while writing your diagram. There is one more figure below that also you write. Okay, students, let us see what is the meaning of slenderness of masonry walls. I think you all know about what is the meaning of slender. So, what is the meaning of slenderness ratio? What is the meaning of slenderness ratio? Height to thickness. Okay, height of the wall. The ratio of height of the wall to that of thickness is considered as slenderness ratio, and even the length to thickness ratio is also considered as the slenderness ratio. Okay, for better performance of a masonry wall during the earthquake, these ratios should be maintained within the limit. Okay, these slenderness ratios should be maintained within the limit. Either it may be slenderness ratio with respect to the height of the wall, or it may be slenderness ratio with respect to the length of the wall. It may be a H by T ratio, or it may be L by T ratio. If both these slenderness ratios are maintained within the limit, then only the wall, then only there will be a improved performance of the wall during the earthquake. Okay, here you can see an example, that is figure A. Figure A. If you compare the height of the building, as the height of the wall H1 to that of figure B wall, that is H2, which height is more? The height of wall 1, that is figure A, is more. Okay, but when you take thickness of the wall, thickness is same. You can just judge by referring to the figure. Thickness is same. Okay, though both the walls are having the same thickness. Okay, though the both walls are having same thickness, but variation in the height will change the slenderness ratio of the wall. Okay, means H1 by T value will be greater than H2 by T value. Okay, means slenderness ratio of wall 1, that is slenderness ratio of figure A, is greater when you compare slenderness ratio of the figure B, even though the thicknesses are same. Okay, then when you compare figure B and figure C, the heights are same. Whatever the height of the figure B is there, no, it has got same height only, H2 only. But thickness of the wall, when you compare thickness of the wall 3 or thickness of figure C is different. It is somewhat lesser than actual thickness T. Okay, let us take this as T3. In this case, the T3. Okay, the thickness of the wall is less than thickness of the second wall. Okay. Sure. T3. Okay, when you compare slenderness ratio of the second case to that of third case, okay, slenderness ratio of second case will be again less compared to the third case, because though the heights of the walls are same, thickness of the second wall is lesser compared to the thickness of the third wall is lesser compared to the thickness of the second wall. Therefore, the wall having larger height will also result in higher slenderness ratio. Wall having larger length will also result in higher slenderness ratio. Therefore, whether it may be the height of the wall or it may be the length of the wall, they should have a proper proportioning with respect to the thickness of the wall. Okay, they should have the proper proportioning with respect to the thickness of the wall. Then only we can maintain a specific slenderness ratio for good performance of the wall during the earthquake. Okay, so in this case, figure A and figure C, the wall 1 and wall 3 are considered as slender walls compared to the wall 2. Okay, in wall 1 height is more, in wall 3 the length is more. Okay, because of larger height slenderness ratio is higher, because of larger length of the wall slenderness ratio of the wall 3 is higher. Okay, so both the cases are assumed to be slender walls. Okay, next the question is how to overcome and there will be some unavoidable situations. We have to go for some certain height of the wall and we have to go for some certain length of the wall. Okay, in those unavoidable situations, what is the remedy? What is the remedy? We have the remedy in two ways. One is by providing horizontal and vertical RCC bands. Okay, here you can see the horizontal and vertical RCC bands are provided at regular intervals. Okay, in this way you can reduce the dimension of the wall. Here you can see when you provide RCC bands, the dimension of the wall will be reduced. Like correct, it will be subdivided into different portions. Okay, therefore again the capacity of the wall will increases. That is the one method of improving lateral resistance of the wall. One more method is to provide the buttresses at regular intervals, the steel elements. Okay, by providing buttresses at regular intervals, you can improve the performance of the wall. Okay, you can improve performance of a slender wall. Okay, these two are the remedies. Okay, I hope you got an idea about what is the slenderness ratio of a wall and what is the remedy. Okay, next coming to the failure of masonry walls during the earthquake, there are different types of failures which we can see. We can see different types of failure of masonry structures depending upon the end conditions, depending upon the as we just now discussed slenderness ratio. Okay, and depending upon the strength of the wall, we can see different failure patterns. Please write the figure. Please write the figure. Write all the figures, please. Okay, students. So let us see what are the different failure patterns which we come across during the earthquake in the masonry wall. Okay, here you can see the first case where the ratio of length to height ratio, okay, where the ratio of, if you take L as length of the wall and H as height of the wall, okay, you can see just by looking into the figure, you can see, you can observe that the length of the ratio of length to height ratio is less. Okay, in this case what happens is the masonry will undergo failure by developing horizontal cracks at the base of the wall itself. Okay, because it will have more moment. Okay, because its height is very its height is more compared to the width. Okay, because of more moment concentration at the base of the building, at the fixity of the building, you can see a horizontal crack developed at the base of the building. This is how the failure takes place when the length to height ratio is smaller. Okay, instead of being a smaller length, if it has got a larger length, when you calculate the ratio of length to height, then it will be higher compared to the previous case. In this case, the type of failure will be a diagonal crack developed in the wall, a diagonal crack developed in the wall. By developing a diagonal crack, the failure of the wall will take place. Okay. In this case, the large amount of lateral force will be handled by the wall. Okay, large amount of lateral force. This is the actual failure pattern or actual expected failure pattern of the wall. Okay, expected failure pattern is this only. It should undergo with diagonal failure, diagonal cracks. Okay. Therefore, the proper length to height ratio should be maintained with proper thickness of the wall. Okay. Then coming to the joints between the walls and the diaphragm members like slab or beam or the column. Okay. If proper fixity is not given between the wall and this diaphragm, okay, the edge of the slab or beam and the column junction, then what will be the type of failure? If an lateral force acts onto the structure, means suddenly because of improper connection between the joints, wall itself will undergo failure directly. Okay, directly wall will undergo failure like this, as shown in the figure. If proper fixity is given at the corners as well as between the diaphragm and the wall, between the slab edge and the wall, then a combined action of the structure will take place, which will result in efficient handling of the earthquake forces. Okay, the combined action of the structure will take place. Okay, means whatever the forces which are acting onto the wall, what are the forces which are acting onto the wall, they will be redistributed to the slab element, okay, and beam element, and at the corner column element. Okay, in this way the redistribution of the lateral force will take place. Okay, when redistribution takes place efficiently, it will handle the large amount of earthquake forces which is acting onto it. Okay, therefore the connection at the joint is very important thing, very important step. Okay, if whatever the infill walls we have constructed, if they are connected properly, okay, even in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction, if a rigid joint is provided, then it will behave as a whole. Okay, it will behave as a box element. Okay, it will resist most of the earthquake forces. Okay, therefore the proper joint should be provided. Okay, so this is the case where the wall is improperly connected at the joint. This is the failure pattern where the wall is improperly connected with the joints. Okay, this is the failure pattern. Okay, where the wall is rigidly connected at the joints. Okay, see, if you are able to remember or write these figures properly, what is there in this explanation, you can easily give the explanation. Okay, the next topic is in the failure pattern only. This is with respect to the combined action. Okay, when you go on studying in detail about the failure pattern, there are different failure patterns which we come across depending upon the way in which the load is acted onto the wall. That is one way vertical bending, one way horizontal bending, and diagonal bending. That we will discuss in the next class. Okay, we will discuss in the next class. I'll take the attendance.